Welcome back, Mega Brainiacs. We are here for more live, authentic nerdery from Mega Brain Comics. I am John Michelle, and today I will be speaking to one of my absolute favorite people in comics. He's a rare mythological creature that not only creates his own amazing comics, like my favorite Murder Falcon, but also crosses the fence between Marvel and DC to work on books like Beta Ray Bill, Argent Star, and Wonder Woman Dead Earth. And he also writes and illustrates his books, which is just amazing. So, without further ado, I give you Mr. Daniel Warren Johnson.
Hello. Thanks so
Hey,
much for having me.
thanks for coming, man. This is awesome. I kid you not, like Murder Falcon has been in my probably top three favorite comics since it came out. Like
Excellent.
it was one of the most surprising series that I've ever read. And
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
um, and a little housekeeping for anybody that's watching. Um, if you go to megabraincomics.com right now, during the live stream, you'll get 10% off any order from our Daniel Warren Johnson collection, which includes the pre-order for talking about today, Do a Powerbomb, issue number 1, which I read the other night like 3 times. It's so good, dude.
Awesome.
I'm so excited about this series. So without giving any spoilers away, can you tell us what is Do a Powerbomb about?
Yeah, so Do a Powerbomb is basically the final culmination of all of my like wrestling influences and loves, along with trying to present a kind of okay, how do I put it? I guess I would say put it like this, like I'm a huge wrestling fan, but I also acknowledge that like not every comic book fan is also a huge wrestling fan. I feel like it was important for me to make a book that could be relatively accessible to the wrestling layman, so to
Gotcha.
speak. So of course, I'm trying to get in all my love of wrestling and storytelling in this book, but I kind of like you mentioned Murder Falcon. I don't feel like you have to love heavy metal to love Murder Falcon.
Yeah.
Um, and in the same token, I don't feel like you have to love wrestling to be a fan of Do a Power Bomb. So all that's kind of the goal. That was the mindset going into it, and as far as story, like the 30-second elevator pitch is a girl named Lona Steel Rose. She's got that like inherent talent, and her mom was like the best to ever do it in the ring. Her mom was the world champion.
Mm-hmm.
And some bad crap goes down in the middle of issue 1, and Lona finds
Yeah.
herself kind of on the back foot, not sure what to do, and you know, has some options with a certain wrestling promoter who just happens to be a necromancer.
Yeah, it is one of it's one of the more compelling first issues of a comic
Awesome.
that
Oh, I'm
I've read
glad
in
to
a
hear
long
that.
time. So you said you are a huge wrestling fan. I'm not sure how old you are, but I grew up with WWF,
Yeah.
and so kind of reading this really did like kind of bring a lot of that back, and it is this magic trick that you do, because like I don't keep up with wrestling anymore these days, but you kind of give everybody enough like inside baseball just to um uh, just to kind of catch them up on what they need to know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I mean, part of me is even wondering, I'm still like final files for issue 1 are not due to the printer until like middle of May. So
Oh.
I'm part of me is thinking that I should have like a little one page like this is how wrestling works comic. That's
Oh,
like
that would actually be awesome.
that would be the like opener. Like it would be like the get the front cover and you flip it
Yeah,
and then
like the
uh
kind of where the credits page usually is, like that
exactly.
kind of a
Yeah, it's
thing.
like almost mixed in with the credits. So
I feel like they did that with was it that comic book Jam about roller derby? I feel like there's a roller derby comic that kind of gives you a hey, most people don't know what roller derby, how roller derby works. So just, I think it was like in the back of the issue or something.
Yeah,
So this is what a jammer is, and like all this stuff, and like I think that's perfect. That would be great.
yeah. I think I'm gonna try and tackle that this week.
Um, oh, and actually, okay, so that actually leads really nicely into my next question, because you write and illustrate your comics, and
I do.
your your illustrations, like one of the most distinguishable footprints or fingerprints on comics today. Like as soon as you see like a cover or a page of your artwork, I'm like, oh my god, I know exactly who that is, and I'm picking that up and reading it now. So, but how what's the difference, or how do you work differently when you're just doing the art as opposed to when you're writing and illustrating,
Yeah, it's a
like
great
kind of the
question.
communication with the other writer,
Hmm.
you know.
I think I think it's different in the sense that so much of my creative energy is going into trying to like climb into the writer's brain and trying to
Yeah,
figure out their vision. Um, and of course, there's all sorts of different writers, but it's like writers are kind of like I used to do illustration and like graphic design before I did comic books,
mhm.
and you're trying to like get into the head of the person who like is asking you to do something.
Yeah, the client is like,
Exactly. Yeah, you kind of like a client relationship where you're like,
yeah,
okay, I kind of know where you're coming from, and I know what you've done in the past and what you've enjoyed in the past, and you get an idea of kind of what they're going for, and then that's what you're shooting for. So
yeah,
at the same time where you're presenting like your own artistic self, you're also trying to fit that artistic self and kind of shave it into the correct shape
yeah,
so it'll fit and everything will flow really well.
without
Um,
saying too much of like, I think it should be this.
right.
It's more of, okay, you kind of want this, and I also added, this giant blood splatter also, because I thought that might be awesome.
Yeah, it's like that perfect marriage of like two brains coming together in one voice, which I
Yeah,
think is really challenging to do. Um, but when I am writing and drawing for my own self, also, well, there's also this kind of element with a writer where if a writer has me like doing a crowd scene, I'm like, this isn't necessary. Wah." But if I wrote a crowd scene, I'm like, well, I guess I just have to do this. Like,
I mean that just the opening pages of this comic book.
oh, yeah, there's a lot
I
of
like
people.
opened it up and I was like, wow, this he's been working on this for a while.
That was a big challenge too with like working on this book. I was actively looking at other comic books and other comic book artists. Like, how do they draw massive crowds in stadiums? It's really tough.
I did notice you have a couple. It almost seems like you have a couple of tricks here and there, like
Mm,
depending on the angle that you're like kind of showing the scene from. It's like, oh, he was able to just like kind of throw this little row of people in and kind of give the illusion of,
yes.
yeah, like it's
Yeah, that's one of my main tricks is you draw the row and you like
bravo, sir.
you take like a fair amount of time on the row
Yeah.
and it's just noise in the background. Done. I was looking at a
um,
lot of wrestling manga actually that from back in the day. I was kind of scouring the internet for kind of visual kind of reference on how other comic book creators tackle like wrestling action and wrestling crowds.
yeah.
Um, and it's so funny because you can totally tell that their assistants, like a lot of these manga artists, have assistants.
Oh,
they
so you're seeing like
you
the,
like you see like you can tell it's like yeah draw a crowd there and the
yeah.
assistant's like okay and they're like drawing it and it doesn't look anything stylistically like the artist.
It's like draw Metropolis. I'll drop Superman in
Yeah.
right here.
I was like, "Oh, I don't have assistants. How am I gonna make this work?" So, again, going back to the writing and drawing for myself, because I was the one who brought myself into this damn idea,
Yeah,
uh, there's almost like a kind of stubbornness, like acceptance of like, well, I know my vision for this story and I have it in my head, and it's very easy for me to get there because it is my story. So I know what is required to make it like really special.
But does that make it harder though? Because I know when you're kind of collaborating with somebody, like they're gonna put the brakes on you at certain points, like when you want to like kind of go off the rails. So like when you are that person, do you kind of Peter Jackson it and you're just like, I'm putting everything in?
That's a great way to put it. I think first starting out, so like with my webcomic Space Mullet, which is the first thing that I ever really wrote and drew, and then
Oh,
going
actually, before
into
you, so where
oh
can people find that?
oh geez, that's at space-mullet.com. Um
Okay.
I
Or I mean,
I
I'm
think
sure they can Google it
it's
also.
out of print. Uh it's been out of print with Dark Horse for like a year now, so I should probably get on that. Um but then also Extremity, which is a book I did with Image.
Which we have available right now in our collection for you for 10% off, people.
Yes. With that book, I was also like, there was a little bit of like must cram everything, Peter Jackson,
Yeah,
and then it's just, I think that is something that new creators of every medium kind of struggle with, and the kind of like almost like a perfectionist mindset of like, got to get everything in, got to make it all complicated, super
yeah,
intense. And that's not necessarily what a story requires all the time. And so that's, I think, less than, I think it's less a, not having a writer involved and more a just newbie kind of.
yeah.
And like I guess I shouldn't say
Needs
new
more
because
lasers, more
there are people,
explosions.
yeah, there are people who've been working in comics who like, go off on their own to write and draw, and they've been working for years and they do the exact same thing. So I think
Yeah,
you're right. You actually you're probably right. It's like the sandbox gets so big that you're like, "Whoa, okay. There's
it
like almost
almost
too
makes
many
it tougher.
options."
Yeah,
Whereas, like, when I was working on Wonder Woman, it was almost easier because, like, I couldn't, like you said, there were
but
these, like, creative,
like
like
DC and Marvel have their like, this is our
exactly.
Bible. You can't
Yes.
go over here. You can't go over here. Like,
Right, like,
yeah.
Wonder Woman can't grow a 3rd arm or whatever, whereas as, like, when you're working on a creator-owned sci-fi book, like, anything's possible to the
Yeah.
point of, yeah, Peter Jackson starts walking in.
Yep. That is awesome. I did notice there were like, so you did this really, I mean, I don't know if it was like a, you did this really cool thing, but in Murder Falcon, there's so much like huge, like frenetic action and like, there's just like a lot of stuff going on in certain scenes. And then there are these like really ultra like intimate moments that like when that happens you almost bring like the panels into like these really tiny moments so it like you really feel the contrast in the
Sure.
story,
Yeah.
which I thought was fantastic. It was amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
um so do a power bomb, that's it's 5 issues,
7.
7 issues, okay. And is there like I don't know. Is there like a kind of an underlying theme that you kind of brought through this? Like I feel like the theme in Murder Falcon was a lot of kind of a little bit of mourning and but also overall like kind of being okay with yourself in a lot of ways, or like,
Sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is there like an underlying theme in Do Power Bomb that like we should not look out for, but that we'll find kind of threaded through?
Yeah, I sure hope so. I was it's funny, I as I was working on it, I was getting down to the wire after Beta Ray Bill
Mhm.
because I knew that I wanted to do a creator own thing after Beta Ray Bill, but it has to be written for me to work on it. So
Yeah.
I'm writing it and I was trying to find that theme. And um I do have a theme, and I think it's along the lines of, well, hold on. If I tell you the theme, then I'm worried that it'll
Oh
give
yeah.
away
Is it?
part of the story.
I guess yeah. Not if it's a spoiler or anything like that.
Well, so the theme comes out in the very end of the issue where like a character almost kind of spells it out. It's almost like part of the scene. So I think I'm
Okay.
going to hold off on telling you the theme.
Okay.
Also, it's, one thing I can give away that isn't like a spoiler, but this tournament that this character Lona is going on in Do a Powerbomb is not a solo tournament. It is a tag team tournament.
Oh,
Yes.
so she need.
She has to join forces with somebody, and I can't tell you who it is.
Oh my
But
god, I can't wait for
there's
issue two.
so with each character's arc in a tag team, they kind of like writers and artists, they move together, and they work together. And
Yeah.
in some ways, there are uh two themes that are running side by side along this tag team. So that's
Okay.
all I'll say about that.
All right. Very cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So was there not an inspiration, or like was there like an impetus or like just a spark, like you said you wanted to create something that spoke to your love of
Mm.
wrestling, but like so the one comic book that I ever put out was this whole post-apocalyptic thing with like knights and punk rock music and all this stuff, but it all started just because a friend of mine gifted me a longsword, and like I was holding this thing and I was like, oh my god, I want a comic book that just has like a ton of like badass stuff and people fighting with swords. Like, was there a moment like that for you that kind of brought this comic out?
I really like that story because that's like just pure inspiration. Like, this is awesome. I want to make things, and my battery just died. One
Oh,
second. I have a fresh battery right here. I just have to swap it out.
okay. I
I'm
can
gonna,
I can still hear you.
yes, I'm gonna keep talking. Um, no, but what you mentioned is just like straight up, like pure inspiration, tried and true. This is awesome. I want to do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it happen. Um, and that's great. And I think in a lot of ways, that's a lot of how Space Mullet started.
Hmm.
My webcomic. There we go. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. No worries.
Oh, now I'm crooked.
You're like
I
a villain scene in '66 Batman.
My camera is sitting on top of a Star Trek action
Oh,
figure.
nice.
Okay, there we go. So
Sidebar: have you been watching any of the new
I
series?
have watched the first season of Discovery,
Okay,
uh, and I need to watch more.
it's
I did a culling. I did like a subscription culling,
yeah.
and CBS All Access did not make the cut.
You watched my, actually no, at this point it's not my least favorite season of Discovery, but
Oh,
if
okay.
it like there's two seasons of Discovery where I was like, yes, we got Star Trek back, and the first and this past season are not among those two.
The first season,
Yeah,
'cause
the first
I
season I
really
was I
struggled
was
with the first season.
yeah,
But dude,
man.
when she Vulcan gripped her own captain, I was like, I don't know about this. I just don't know about this.
But I'm excited for Strange New Worlds though. Like the
Right on.
trailer for that looks amazing. And
Yeah, it does.
actually my favorite Star Trek thing that they're making right now is Lower Decks. If you get a chance to watch that, it is my favorite new Trek
Okay.
of all. Yeah.
I think I've like watched one episode and I loved it, and I just need to like get back.
Yeah,
I
it's
I, I need to
there's
get
so
better at
much stuff to
watching. So,
watch, and I mean you're you know drawing insane crowd scenes in wrestling matches, like you can't have that much time.
well, to go back to your original like inspiration question, um, one of the reasons that I started making Space Mullet was I was so inspired by Mass Effect and those like intertwining stories
Yeah,
in that video game, and super epic in scope, but also with some really awesome heart. And I was like, man, I really want to make a sci-fi book that's kind of like this. And
nice.
that's was one of the things that got the thrusters going for me, like to push me to make stuff because it takes a lot of work to make a comic and
Anything.
story. Yeah, anything.
Yeah, like to create something, really, just like you gotta dig deep for all of it.
So one thing that I'll add to that then is, that really pure, like, this is so badass. I need to make something that makes me feel this way or is celebrating that.
Yeah,
I do this. I've been doing this since 2012. Um,
you
and
started. doing comics in 2012?
Yeah, I started making Space Mole in 2012.
Jesus, man. Like, bravo. Like, seriously.
Thank you. Um, but making creator on stuff, I'm always looking for that element of like things that get me excited.
Yeah.
And genre fiction is one of those things that'll do it, like movies and TV shows, those kinds of things that are still in kind of the realm of comic books.
Yeah.
But I find myself kind of searching farther and farther outside of the sphere of like traditional genre fiction for to bring to the table because I'm looking for new things that get me excited. And I'll
Yeah.
always have a love for like Star Wars and Hellboy and all those things that kind of got me on the road in the first place. But
Mhm.
as I get older, I'm looking for like new things that can continue to fuel the want for for change and new
Yeah. But
things.
also because after a while, it all starts to feel like, the same thing just with like a new skin.
Hmm. And so, you know, I feel like for me, wrestling is like a pretty new love. Like I started watching wrestling in like 2018 with
Oh,
New
wow.
Japan Pro Wrestling. Yeah, I'm a noob.
Wow,
Um,
dude.
yeah, but I
So
was
we're
like,
we're we're total opposite spectrum. Like
yes,
after Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling ended on Saturday mornings and Glow ended and all of that, like and then it went to WCW. I don't even know.
WCW. Yep,
It
yep,
went to WCW. That's when I just kind of like really fell off.
yep.
But
And
yeah,
it's
it's
I talk to a lot of fans who are wrestling fans who are either lapsed or have been fans since like the mid 80s. And I'm like, well, I started watching in 2018 and it was only Japanese wrestling.
so wait,
uh,
what's Japanese wrestling like? Is it more like kind of American, or are we talking like luchador style? Like,
so the promotion that I watch the most is called New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they take their kayfabe really seriously. So like the heels like travel in a different tour bus than the baby faces. And when they have these matches, a lot of times like they hit a little harder and it's like a little more intense and it is a
oh
bit
wow,
more of a sports based presentation usually. Um it's really intense and I started watching right around summer 2018 where they have this tournament called the G1 Climax. Have you heard of that?
no,
It's like this round robin tournament where there's an A block and a B block, and
okay,
everybody in the A block faces everybody in the B block and vice versa, right? And
yeah,
whoever has the most points goes to the final. And it's basically like amazing wrestling match after amazing wrestling match, like every other night in like July and August.
oh
Um,
cool,
it is awesome. And there was one match in particular. This guy called Kota Ibushi, he wrestled this big like powerhouse dude. Um, his name was Tomohiro Ishii, and they had this match that was incredible. Like I had never seen it. I haven't been watching that much wrestling, but like they went at each other so hard. You know, when like it's almost like they have something to prove when they're hitting
yeah.
each other. Yeah.
I will say that like kind of reading through the first issue of Do a Powerbomb, like there's like a turn in it where because when I started reading it, I was like, oh, this is a world where it's like this is like legit, like real, like this is hard, and they are like really fighting. And then there's like a slight turn, and
Yep.
it was like, oh, I don't know, this is wrestling,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit more intense than like
Yep.
American. So it comes through that you've been watching something like that. I gotta check out some of that.
It's an
So it
amazing.
was
It's
so
amazing.
you what is that tournament called?
It's called the G1 Climax,
The G1
or the
Climax.
G1.
Okay.
Um, And the one I would recommend watching any of the matches from 2018 or 2019 because once
Okay.
the pandemic hit,
Oh
things
hell,
went downhill pretty fast. But
pretty sure
um,
that's a statement that goes across the board.
yeah, yeah, totally. Um, but so New Japan has been a huge inspiration, and then when a bunch of guys who the WWE deemed like not cool enough or not big enough or not charismatic enough or whatever. They were making it big in the indies and in Japan, like at New Japan, all through the
Yeah.
mid 2010s. Um, and they came back and they started a promotion called AEW, All Elite Wrestling.
Oh yeah, I've seen.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the hat right now.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Nice.
and so they all kind of came from Japan and the Indies, and they started up a new company that has been giving WWE a run for their money in America.
Is this the company that kind of it's not, I don't know why the term open source popped in, but it's like it almost gives more of the wrestlers like kind of ownership over their like just their careers.
I think I don't know, I mean, exactly how it works, but for instance, like there's no scripted promos in AEW,
Oh,
whereas
cool.
like WWE, like you're getting like a
Yeah.
you have writers that like tell
Yeah.
you like you're saying this, and you don't get that in AEW. The people are
Okay.
just they're kind of being able to um, bring their own self to the table in that sense with their own gimmicks and their presentation, and
That's
it comes
cool. I
off a
like
lot more natural. And you have these guys that are just and gals that are really great at what they do. Like when it comes to like talking on the mic and connecting with the audience, and there's nothing holding them back. It's really exciting.
feels less like porn.
Yeah. And then like, you have these like moments where um because me coming from like a Japanese only background, they don't do a ton of promos there. They don't really do a bunch of funny stuff in the ring. It's all
Mhm.
just wrestling, and then they kind of are telling a story in the ring, but it's all really subtle. Whereas in America, it's like way overstated, and there's like all this
Yeah.
stuff happening in the back. And I didn't realize that this was a huge part of the wrestling culture in America because I went back before AEW got started. I went back. I was like, let's see what WWE is like. And I turned it on. I'm like, man, this really isn't for me. uh, but I
So
I was watching like the current day WWE. Like there's some
yeah,
like you said, like there's some golden years of just
yeah.
excellent stuff that I totally missed out
and,
on.
and it's all so not drastically different, but it all has its own distinct um like each era has its very own distinct vibe,
Yes.
which is really cool.
And that's one
uh,
cool thing about AEW is there's so much history there. Like a lot of their segments are like kind of referencing or celebrating old parts of American pro wrestling,
oh,
um,
nice.
which have been really cool because the commentators will be like they'll throw in little salt and pepper comments of like, oh, this is like in the 87 or whatever feud, or they'll mention these names, and then I'll go back and I'll like start researching that stuff and watching those matches and seeing that history, and then I'm like,
See,
oh my gosh, I
that's
see what they're doing there, and they're kind of carrying it into present day. It's really cool.
that's cool. I mean, that's the difference between somebody that's like just making something to make something, and then somebody that's kind of like wearing their heart on their sleeve
Yes,
for the thing that they're making, which I'm always like just a sucker for.
totally. And
um
I'm a sucker for AEW. I mean, I've gone to a bunch of shows. I was there at their last full capacity show in February of 2020, and then I was there at their first full capacity show
oh, post COVID.
post COVID in May of 2021.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Was there not a difference, but could you feel it like that, like everybody, I feel like there's a lot of stuff like the first time I went to actually the first time I went to a movie theater during the pandemic, there was only like 5 people in it, which was the reason I went to see a movie. I was like, nobody's going to go see this movie.
Sure.
But I did go to a screening of like a blockbuster at one point, like when everything started to kind of get back into the groove, and you could feel like everybody was like looking at each other
Yeah.
like, hey, look what we're doing.
It was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Because this was down in Florida on an outdoor there an outdoor stadium, in Jacksonville, right next to where the Jaguars play.
Oh, cool.
And it was like full capacity crowd, and it was glorious. It was just
Nice.
glorious. It was so
Nice.
much fun. I had a great time, and I was only there. I was in Florida for less than 24 hours. I flew in, watched
Just
the
for
show.
this?
Yeah,
Dang.
watched the show, and then like slept 3 hours in the hotel, and then flew home.
Nice.
It was
Very
amazing.
nice.
Thank you, Rachel, my wife, for letting me do that.
Let's thank all of our wives for letting us do the things that they
Amen.
allow us to do.
Amen.
Like my wife allowing me to do this right now when I because
Likewise.
yeah, when I should be like, you know, shop vacuuming the water in my basement. um, so out of all of the insanely awesome comic books and characters that you have gotten to work on, like your creator stuff, the stuff from the big two, what like who is your all-time, like who's your favorite character that you've worked on and why?
That I've made myself.
Either way, like that. Well, actually, yeah. Who's your favorite creator-owned character that you've made?
Probably Murder Falcon. I
Yeah,
love that design, and drawing him never gets old.
it's so good, dude. Like I like it was one of the most surprising things that I opened up that
Awesome.
year.
I'm
Um,
glad you liked it.
so
Um,
why do you like Murder Falcon so much?
well, I love characters with bandanas. Um,
Nice.
I love the kind of really. I'll put it this way: I am kind of a crazy person. I have these sketchbooks right here.
Mhm. Oh, I've
Three of
seen
these
online. You go through a lot of sketchbooks, dude.
I do. I'm at like 40 now. Um,
Jesus.
these are from the era right around the time that I was working on Extremity,
Oh, okay.
and I'm doing all this concept art for Extremity. And you remember the robot Shiloh in Extremity?
Yes. Yeah.
I drew so many damn drawings of that robot. I was trying to figure out his design for so long. And it's like a whole there's like one sketchbook in here that's like just robot drawings of me trying to figure it out. Like I'm trying to
Jesus.
get it perfect, right?
I
And
mean, it comes through in the work. I
thank
just
you.
didn't realize it was that intense.
I'm sure it also comes through in my insanity when when I'm like walking through the house like, is this good? uh
Hey, honey, look at this robot.
yeah. She's like, that's not different than the robot you drew yesterday. I'm like, oh no, it's way different.
Look at this finger. Totally different than that
Yeah.
one.
Um so with Murder Falcon, no, I did one drawing and that was it. It was like
Oh,
one and
nice.
I had it. The only thing I designed a little bit was his arm. It was like way more it was not as Kirby-ish. His arm wasn't as
Oh,
Kirby-ish when I
okay.
started, and I wanted something a little more like Kirby tech. That's why there's that
Okay.
like random pipe on his arm for no reason.
Yeah. Was it
Um,
what was it? Was more like because I could see going the route of like Colossus or something like that. Just kind of like,
it was
I've got the
more
general metal arm.
it was more along the lines of like something you'd see out of like a Neil Blomkamp movie. Does that make sense? Like Elysium or
Oh,
District
yes.
9?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where
cool.
it's like a little more like actual robot arm, where it
Yeah.
does like yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool.
Um,
Well, I'm a big fan of where it landed. And
Thank
for
you.
anybody that because I just always have to talk this comic book up. For anybody that has never read Murder Falcon, like I don't know what your elevator pitch for this book is, but for me, it's always like the simplest thing for me to say is Pacific Rim meets Tenacious D,
Hell yeah.
and with like a whole lot of heart.
Yep.
Like the twist in it, and when I got to that, there is a twist that like you will not see coming. When I got to that, I was like, "What?" And it was like the floor dropped out, and I was like, "Holy shit, this guy is amazing."
Awesome.
Yeah, I highly recommend it to everybody. We never it's never not on our shelves at Mega Brain. And actually, one of the things that we have available right now is the pre-order for the deluxe edition, which you have coming out.
Hardcover, which
Yeah.
also includes the little backup of how the band got Jimmy's drum set from the
Oh.
Skybound X series that came out last year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be on my shelf, and I'm going to reread it in its all new format, kind of like when Tommy Lee Jones is like, "Well, I guess I got to buy the White Album again." So speaking of which, um, I could talk to you about like your comics and your art like all day, but I also would like to know, because what comes through clearly in everything that you make is that you're just a fan in general of so much stuff. So if you would be so kind as to tell us, what are you currently geeking out on, whether it's like movies, music, TV, books,
Hmm.
comics, whatever.
So, my wife got me this novel, actually. It's a fantasy novel called The Black Tongue Thief.
Oh,
I can't remember the author's name, but my goodness, what a great friggin' book. I mean, page turner, the way he writes about stuff, his like names for places and why they're called those things are so cool. Character like um voices are super clear. This guy, I don't remember his name, but he like this author tours the United States doing Renaissance fairs. His name
oh.
is and he goes by the name at these Renaissance fairs, Christoph the Insulter, where like you pay him to make fun of your friends and he'll make like
Oh,
old school like medieval jokes at the
I
expense of
love
your
that.
loved ones, and it's pretty amazing. Um
We've got a huge Ren fair here in the Hudson Valley,
okay.
that's been going since I was a kid. I'm wondering
I
if he
I'm
ever
sure
makes his
he's
way to
made an
that.
appearance. If it's a big one, I'm sure he's been there at least once.
Nice.
Um, but the Black Tongue
The
Thief.
Black Tongue Thief. All
Is
right,
it
I'm gonna
cool if
look it
I?
up.
I'm gonna Google this. Black Tongue
Oh yeah, yeah, totally, man.
Thief by Christopher Buellman. Buehlman.
Okay, and like what genre is it? Fantasy, sci-fi, or like action, or
It's like fantasy, but it has that kind of snap. It's like the snappy fantasy. It's not like I mean, I love Lord of the Rings, but it's not like that. It's
it's
like
more like Terry Pratchett?
well, I've never
But
read a Terry Pratchett novel. I'm sorry to
Terry,
say.
like Douglas Adam. Have you ever read like The Hitchhiker's Guide?
I know it should. Yes, I have. It's like that, but it's not like as intention. It's not as like deadpan funny. It's like
Less
it's just
British.
it is. Yeah, it's way less British. I'll put it that way. Uh, but it's like a really entertaining read. I feel like sometimes when I say the word fantasy novel, people are like, "Whoa," you know.
Yeah,
But the world building and the whole, I can't recommend it enough. It's one of the best books I've read in a long time. So,
cool. All right,
yeah.
it's going on my list. The
Yeah, I
Black
hi and
Tongue
it's like
Thief.
it's not super long. I mean, it's long enough, but, like, I guarantee you, you're gonna be sad when it ends.
All right,
So,
those are some of my favorite books. The ones where you're like, oh my god, you immediately go on and you're like, does this have a sequel, or
yeah,
is he working on
yeah,
something
you're, like,
new?
looking it up.
Yeah.
This one, apparently, he's working on it, but I don't know when it's gonna come out.
All right,
Um,
that's
but,
good to know.
and then I finally got, Dune on Blu-ray. I watched it
Oh,
for
nice.
the second time for the
That is a movie that I'm actually disappointed in myself that I didn't go to the theater for
mm.
that one, because it's like it's such a big, like visually big movie that I just didn't get the same experience in our living room.
I feel though that because of the way the movie is presented and the whole, like you said, the vibe, they're gonna have special showings of it.
Oh yeah,
It'll
like
happen.
it's
It's
but it's definitely one of those movies that I was like, I should have just like found an IMAX somewhere and like just bit the bullet
11
for
a.m. showing
yeah.
on a Wednesday.
Nice.
Yeah. So
um
I've been watching, or I watched that again, and honestly, like after you know Disney kind of like overtaking Star Wars and kind of giving it this kind of buttoned up quality, which I don't want to crap on it too much, but it just doesn't excite me really as an artist. I guess that I
yeah,
sound like such a snooty POS, but uh
I I I'm right there with you. Like that
okay,
totally tracks. I the one Star Trek, the one Star Wars thing that they are making that actually does excite me is like the Mandalorian is the one thing that they've made that I'm like, oh, this kind of gives me that feeling
sure,
that I had when I was a kid watching Star Wars. Not
right on.
completely, but it's the closest thing, and everything else just kind of feels like almost like they were like, hey, let's make a Star Wars like thing. You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Um, but so Dune is kind of giving me that excitement about sci-fi again.
Yeah.
And I am working on a sci-fi book myself that would be
Really?
really epic in scope. Yeah, creator-owned book. I've been working on the designs for it for over 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Um, and the story has just, the story just takes a little while to come into fruition, and it's
I've
starting to come
been
into the brain. So
writing a story for uh, probably like a year and a half, and
it's
I'm
tough.
still not close like the first draft of the script. So I
Yeah,
feel you.
it's tough with these kind of epic sci-fi things because, like we were talking about before, the sandbox is too big.
Yeah.
Um, and in some ways, I feel like for me, I had to like kind of come up with a way into the story rather than just trying to tell a story within the world. And
Yeah.
like start it small
Yeah.
for the first few issues, and then
You kind
open
of
it.
have to, especially when the world is big, because it, if you don't, it almost feels like you're just making a really cool Wikipedia page,
Yep.
you know? And
Yep.
so, yeah,
No, totally. And yeah, and like that's unfortunately how a lot of sci-fi books can come out is they read a
yeah.
little bit like a Wikipedia page, and it's like this is so cool that a person came up with all this, but like if there's not
But
a soul to connect to,
yeah, like I
it's
need to
all
feel something personal. Like I hope this doesn't come off like an insult, but like your stories almost feel like Pixar's cooler older sibling with like the awesome record collection.
hell yeah.
You know, like
I'll
it
take
ha-
that. I'll take
it
that all day.
it has its moments where it's just like everything you're watching is like, oh my god, this is so cool, and then you have a moment where like you as the writer like just rip our hearts out and like stomp on them for a little bit and then bring us right back into the action.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That's a great compliment, and I love that. I'm gonna tell my wife that someone said that about my work now. Um,
Well,
yeah, we part of it is like I grew up watching. Oh, right. I was very sheltered as a kid, so I was always clamoring for more kind of media.
like more stuff.
But I love action movies. I love big, bombastic things. But I also love movies that like really make me feel stuff that aren't necessarily related in any way to like genre fiction or anything like
Yeah.
that. I just really love good stories, and a lot of the stories that I love the most are really simple. Um, my favorite movie of all time is Children of Men, actually, with
Ooh,
Clive
nice.
Owen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great freaking movie,
I
and it's really
I watched
simple. Yeah, he,
yeah,
like,
I
basically
watched it
finds a
when
girl that's pregnant in a world where there's no babies, and then he takes her on a journey. Boom.
yeah.
And,
Like
like, there's yeah.
I I feel like those type of stories are always not the best, but they're some of the best stories because like you said, it's so simple. It's a point A to point B story, which almost makes it easier to like give people highs and lows because it's like you just deviate a little bit this way or a little bit this way, and like you've got your drama, you know?
And it's also really good at, like which is always something that I'm trying to do in my stories is like Children of Men, for instance, is this huge world that obviously, like, socio-political
Yeah,
seismic shifts and, like, these huge moments and the stakes are so high, but we're viewing it through the eyes of a guy who has a problem with drinking and a scared girl who is gonna have a baby. And it's
yeah,
like those are some really relatable kind of sets of eyes where we travel through a new world together. And because of that, because it's only like two people's eyes, we kind of view the world like this,
yeah.
you know, which
And
is
not just
great.
two people's eyes, but like two people who are like disparately in like almost two different mindsets.
Totally.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? So it kind of allows you to feel emotions all in between those two,
Mhm.
you know?
And also, something just as like logistically for creators, when I think of it this way, when I only have to tell a story like this, I don't need to know every single interpersonal dynamic about the world. I can
Yeah.
kind of build it on as I'm going.
But
Um,
it's also better that way
yeah,
because
totally.
like when I read genre fiction or actually when I read anything, that has like an outer world in the story. Um, it's more fun when they kind of just give you a little kernel of something
Hmm.
that's like, oh, that's really cool. And once they start like really noodling it and they're like, oh, but the reason it's so cool is because 20 years ago this happened, and it's like, I want my brain to kind of fill in those cracks
Yeah,
and find them. And I feel like that's what makes good storytelling, is when you
totally.
let the reader fill in some of the other cracks and
Yeah.
be part of the creative process.
And it makes less work for me, and I'll take that all day.
Especially when you got to do all those wrestling crowds.
Right. I'm like, I should be figuring out the interpersonal dynamics of my sci-fi comic, but I'm just gonna have to sit here, listen to a podcast, and yeah,
Well, dude, thank you so much for talking with me. I know it's a little unusual doing it this early, but I figure you're, super busy, so like I'll take you when I can get you.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for working with me on the time. This
Yeah,
is like the
absolutely.
time when like things are like the calmest with my family.
Yeah,
So,
I'm right there with you. I have twin toddlers, so it's yeah.
oh man.
Uh, So
Okay.
for anybody that ends up seeing this, which it will be playing, even though this is live right now, we've got it on our all our social pages, so people will be able to replay it whenever they
Okay.
want. And but for anybody that wants to find you, on Twitter and Instagram are the two main places where you are, right?
Yeah, Daniel Warren art on
O-
both.
Okay,
If you
cool,
Google my
perfect.
full name, you will find all that stuff. Um, and you'll find more information on my new book, Do a Power Bomb.
Which you can get, pre-order it right now, megabraincomics.com. You'll get 10% off. You'll
Yes.
also see a whole bunch of his other books that you like. I'm telling you guys, if you have not read any of his comics, start doing it immediately. Immediately. And until next time, stay strong and nerd on, everybody.
Bye. Thank you